These are some things that I think you should know about living in Colorado Springs, especially if you own a home here. Number one is grass. Kentucky bluegrass is not a grass that really should grow here. Colorado is way too dry to be growing this luscious green grassy lawn. It takes up a lot of water, and the state and its residents have grown a lot more conscientious about the amount of water that we are using. So, our city of Colorado Springs is trying to minimize grass lawns when possible. Denver and Aurora are doing similar things. Our utility company has a rebate program where if you switch out your lawn for something else, they'll give you, I think, $1 per square foot credit for that. And we've got restrictions on watering here, so no more than 3 days a week. And it does take a lot of water and money to make sure that these grasses stay green, especially as you get into July and now August here. The sun is just hot. It beats down on everything. And if you're not watering your lawns a few times a day to keep it cool and moist, it's going to dry up and die. And as opposed to that, you could grow clover. You could have a xeriscaped lawn of some kind where it's a combination of, different kinds of big rocks or ornamental grass, uh, plants that are native to here. So Zone 4 plants are the plants that you want to get in Colorado Springs. We get 300 plus days of sunshine here, same as Denver. So it's a lot of sunny days, but we also have our snow. We have our winter season, obviously, and that lasts typically we'll get temperatures will start getting cold in October, and we might get a little bit of snow here and there December, but we really don't start getting snow until January, and we'll get that through April. That's when our snowy months are, and that's if you're going to get a blizzard, if you're going to get a snowdrift, that's when you might get it. And as far as plowing, yes, our roads get plowed. I have driven a rear wheel sedan for the entire of my driving life existence, and I've driven it here. And I've driven several of those types of cars here and not had a problem. You go slow and you're at least in city limits. If you're in city limits, the roads get plowed. Drive under the speed limit a little bit. Be careful. Make sure that what you're driving on could be ice, could be slush. You don't know what it is. So, as far as your sidewalks and your property is concerned, the city rule here is that you need to have your sidewalks and driveways paved and cleared of snow within 24 hours after snowfall. It's not something that I have seen people get fined for or enforced in any way. People generally do want to have their sidewalks and driveways cleared. For the most part, all any of the snows that we get are very mild, and they're going to be gone within a few hours. So you don't even need to shovel them or get rid of anything. If your snow that comes down is very mild, a quarter inch, maybe even a half an inch, it's going to melt. You can shovel it, and if it gets thicker, yeah, absolutely. And make sure that you have a shovel. Make sure that you have a shovel in your car during winter time. That's important in case you get stuck somewhere, especially if you're unfamiliar with it. You want to be able to potentially get yourself out. A snowblower, perhaps, if you want one for your property, for your house. I used to have one. I got rid of it, sold it because I used it a handful of times in several years. It was only for when it got the snowpack was very, big, like a couple of feet. Then then I used it, but it was otherwise a pain to have to get the cord and plug it in and get it out and set it up, and then you'd have to get the snow. Snow would get gunked in there from time to time, and you'd have to like break it up and get it out of there before you could start the machine again, as opposed to just shovel it. So what's easier? It is really dry here, in case you weren't aware, and we are at a high altitude as well, in case you weren't aware. So what that means is that there is not as much oxygen up here as someone would be used to closer to sea level, on the coast. way different. So you're not going to have as much oxygen. So that may be a big shock for some people. We have these little oxygen tanks. They're called Boost, or there's probably other brands too. You can find them at all the different stores, Walmarts, and what have you. And that's just oxygen in there. And that's just for that exact thing. If you're here and you're feeling lightheaded and I can't breathe, that's what it's there for, is to help you acclimate to what people who live here are used to, but you will get used to. As far as the dryness, again, in case you're not used to that, you might want to start using a face and body lotion on a regular basis just to keep your skin moist. A humidifier, either a whole house humidifier or one of those plugins that you can put in your room just to keep it humid enough so that you're not so dried out because dry, itchy skin is no fun. We are a very dog-friendly state here. Many, many people have dogs. I'd say probably 1 out of 2 people here have a dog. So the trail systems here throughout the city are very great for hiking and bringing your pets, your dogs. I suppose you could bring other pets, but that's very rare. One time I saw a cat. You can bring your kids even if you wanted to. So throughout the city, there's several big parks that you can do that on and just have an in-city little trail system. Palmer Park is a great big park right in the middle of the city for that. Valley Park is on the west side. Fox Run Park is on the north end. Memorial Park has a big lake and that is closer to downtown. There are several spots throughout the city where you can get that hiking feel without having to necessarily leave the city. And of course, you've got Garden of the Gods, you've got Woodland Park west of that, Manitou Springs, you've got Red Rocks Canyon, not to be confused with Red Rocks Amphitheater. Red Rocks Canyon, which is very similar to Garden of the Gods, another hiking place, and it's just south of there. And then, of course, you got the mountains. You got Pikes Peak just west of that. You've got the incline in Manitou. There's so many opportunities for outdoorsiness and to have your pets join you on this outdoorsiness. So be prepared to see a lot of dogs. If you're not a dog person, you're going to see dogs, and you'll have to figure out how to grow accustomed to that. In May, every May, we get Miller moths. They are just moths. They're these little brown moths that come in. They come in from the plains, I guess, west toward the mountains looking for wildflowers. And so Colorado Springs is on the way there. And so every May, you'll get just an incoming migrating group of moths that come through for like a month. And this year we had a lot more moths than usual. They stuck around here longer because there was so much moisture uh, in May, June, and the first couple weeks of July this year. There was so much more rain than what anybody was expecting. It just kept raining every day. It was great. I loved the moisture. My Kentucky bluegrass definitely loved it. But because we had so much moisture, the Miller moths stuck around longer because we had all these flowers here and are growing in our city from that. So the moths, they had no reason to continue going into the mountains to look for that. They already had it here. And it brought a lot more bugs in general. Mosquitoes were very prevalent and still are. Especially on the south end. So Fort Carson and Fountain both they spray for mosquitoes every year, but so they extra sprayed down there the streets just to keep it down, the amount of mosquitoes there down because it had just gotten so bad this year. And here's something that you extra need to know about Colorado Springs and just in our area in general, as far as nature is concerned. Cottonwood trees. Cottonwood trees are a wild tree that just they grow here. And you can plant them for sure, you can buy them, but they also just grow here. They are the weed of trees. They have shallow growing roots like an aspen, but they don't have that network system, I guess. That's just they grow fast, they grow quick, and they spread out. and they grow big and tall, which is great for shade. But the problem is that a cottonwood tree's branches are so brittle in general that they can and do often break under heavy snow, which we also had last year. And so a lot of people's cottonwood trees in their yard and cottonwood trees that were just planted along the side of the streets uh, branches broke, cars got destroyed, damage was caused, and it's something I felt could have been avoided. Just if people are aware, this is not a tree that you should plant, and if it starts growing in your yard, I would caution you, I would recommend you not have that and remove it in some way. We removed a huge cottonwood tree in the front of our house right after we bought it. And it was tearing up the driveway, the sidewalk. It had all buckled up about a foot and a half from where it had originally been because the root system had grown so thick and pushed it up. Because the tree was, yeah, probably about, can you see that? About that thick. And a big tree. Wonderful tree, one of the tallest trees in the yard, brought so much shade to the house. Like, great. I hated getting rid of it, but it was causing problems. And with a tree that big, also, it's likely it's so malicious, the roots, that I don't want to experience the long-term consequences of those roots potentially getting to the sewer line. I've seen, I'm a real estate agent. I've seen that. I've seen roots in the sewer lines when people go and inspect them. I don't want to have to deal with that. I would just rather avoid it and have a tree that is not going to do that. You'll notice that Colorado Springs has a lot of churches. I don't know how to compare it actually to other cities. I haven't spent a lot of time in many other cities. I just know that our city of Colorado Springs has historically been a conservative or religious foundational kind of city. And that is how Colorado Springs literally started, is that the city gave free land. They just gave it away to churches or to people who were establishing churches. Those people would still have to come together and, put the money together or pay for construction costs to build the building and whatever, but they got the land for free because the city wanted to encourage people to have churches. They wanted to distinguish Colorado Springs from other already established cities in Colorado or towns in Colorado that were essentially saloon cities. They wanted this to be a family-friendly city. So because of that, that's why you'll see so many churches throughout the city. My family and I moved here in 1992, and at that time, the city was still very conservative. We got focused on the family here. There's a few Christian organizations that, either started here or have their their offices here. So that was definitely a part of my world growing up. And, my family and I went to church, a few different churches in the city growing up. And so I got to experience that. At least not everybody did, I guess. But from my perspective, it was definitely a lot more prevalent for the average person here, I guess, to be Christian in some denomination. And as I have lived here since then, uh, eh, that in that time, the city has changed. There is still that, all those same people, or a lot of them still live here, but the city has grown a lot. And we've had other people from different cities and states move here to Colorado Springs, mainly Denver and then California, different places in there, but many other places in the country too. People have moved here, and that has started to, I guess, change the political demographic. And then more young people are typically more left-leaning, more democratic, and so that has started to sway or skew uh, the city of Colorado Springs into starting to be a more left-leaning, I guess. We elected Yemi Mobolade as mayor over Wayne Williams, Wayne Williams being Republican, and then Yemi Mobolade being independent. So it was very fascinating to see because I didn't expect Yemi to win. I thought, well, he has good, qualifications. I think he could do well. I just figured that the voter base of Colorado Springs would overwhelmingly want Wayne Williams, and that's not the way it turned out. And I think that was a shock to everybody, that who lived here, that, oh, I think our city is becoming a bit more, um, without getting into politics, but becoming more left-leaning. And so that's just my perspective and my experience on how the city has changed and what it looks now today. We have a lot of traffic. Traffic has gotten worse over the years. Yes, I have noticed that. Do we have bad drivers? Yes, of course we do. We also have the state of Colorado is the state with the highest amount of auto theft, and that includes Colorado Springs. So, auto theft is a big problem here and just something to be aware of. And yeah, we also have crappy drivers. So, we also have hailstorms, which affect not only property and houses and buildings, but also your vehicle if it is not stored underneath something that will protect it from that hail. So insurance here in Colorado Springs is a lot higher. Yeah, expect to pay a lot to have your vehicle and to have insurance on anything, to have homeowners insurance is expect you might have to pay $4 or $5,000 as a premium for this year if you're getting an insurance policy on your home. It is just, and it depends. There's a lot of factors going into it, but insurance companies are a lot more wary and they are a lot more risk averse or what's is that the right word? They're more afraid of risk right now than they otherwise would be. And you heard that insurance companies stopped issuing policies in California, right? And then in some parts of Florida, they started doing that. Colorado could be next. So just expect it is more expensive now. We used to have a big problem in our city with potholes. We still do, but it used to be worse. And 2C was a political measure that, or when a ballot measure, whatever, that passed back in 2015. And that was specifically to use extra taxpayers' money to start paying for roads above and beyond the taxes we were already paying, I believe, and that got reinstated or renewed in 2020 as a 5-year period, and then we'll have another chance to renew that in, I guess, 2025. So we have started to spend more money on making sure that our roads are uh, well, kept, maintained, and that there's not these big, holes or problems that are going to wreak havoc on our vehicles. So it has gotten better. And speaking of that, TABOR, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, is something that the state enacted in the 90s, I believe. And the purpose of that was to create a cap on what the amount of taxes that the state could or the city could take from the public. And any amount over that they took from the public, there's a certain amount they would have to give it back to them. And the way that Colorado Springs has gotten around that is by imposing fees instead of incorporating something into a budget or increasing taxes. Yeah, you can't increase taxes by, no more than a certain amount, I believe. But so having fees instead is a way to get around that. But otherwise, I believe for the most part, you have to bring any of those fees to the public for them to vote on. So there's a little bit of an inside scoop into the local politics here. Make sure you drink lots of water too, just in general. Hydrate. Stay hydrated. The recommended just in general for people anywhere is like a half a gallon of water per day. Can you handle a half a gallon of water per day? No, I didn't think so. So you better start because if you come here to Colorado Springs where it's dry and the water is going to get sapped right out of you because it's a desert state. It's a desert state. So make sure you drink water, not soda, not juice, not something with sugar or salt. You need just straight water that's going to keep you hydrated, and you will notice the difference if you do that. Also, regarding traffic purposes, we have a lot of hills here in Colorado Springs. It's hills everywhere. So roads will just higgledy-piggledy up and down, left and right. And this is particularly a problem in the wintertime when you've got snow or especially ice on the ground. There are certain roads here that they will just dip down and then there'll be a steep hill up that you got to climb with your car for a little bit, for like a quarter mile. And if that's covered with sleet or ice, you may not be able to get up there. And I have experienced this like in just very few instances, rare instances where it's just very cold or the very specific circumstances that caused a sheet of ice to just freeze on the road for the night. But you get stuck up there. There's a line of cars that get stuck up there and then they start to, they brake and then they start backtracking and then they hit the car behind them. And if you're not careful, that could be you. So when you're here, I guess, pay attention to where the hills are, especially when there's not snow and when it's spring, summertime, so that you're aware. Maybe avoid going up Stetson Hills or Austin Bluffs during a snowstorm or ice on the road like that, because those two roads, at least that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, are not fun roads to be on in ice. Because we've got 2C, we are doing construction on our roads all the time. There are always construction workers here. You need to be mindful of that and just accept that at some point you're going to have construction on your road and it's going to be annoying and you're going to have a detour and that's going to be annoying and the construction is going to go on for 2 or 3 months and that's going to be annoying. At any given point, our city has like 10, 20, maybe 30 construction projects going all at once. So you drive 10 minutes to do your errand, you run into 2 or 3 construction sites if they're doing something on the road all along the way. And that's just a normal thing. I've just come to expect that. And I would say, yeah, actually, I think since 2015, I started noticing more of that. That makes sense now. We have got a lot of homeless people. Oh no. We've got about was almost 1,400 homeless people were the last official numbers that I looked at. So unofficially, yeah, we likely have more than that, but that's an estimate, right? It's not going to be a whole lot more than that, let's say, right? And so that's for the sake of argument. Compare that to Denver. How many does Denver have? Denver Metro has 9,000 homeless people. Yeah. And that's, again, what they know about, who they've documented. That doesn't take into account the other people who still are homeless and just haven't been counted. So compare Colorado Springs' 1,400 to Denver's 9,000, and Denver's the one that people complain about. I've had clients directly go like, "Oh, I had to come down here. I couldn't stand it up there anymore. I just see a homeless person every time I walk around." He got into a fight with a homeless person, like a homeless person picked a fight with him and then they left. It's just, and that's, a rare case, I'm sure, but compare that to Colorado Springs, we do not have a problem like that. We've got homeless people who hang out downtown because that's where the Springs Rescue Mission is. That's where homeless services are. So they kind of congregate down there. Downtown is a little bit warmer than the north end of town, but there's more services down there. There's a hospital down there. So we do have some homeless people. Colorado Springs is working on affordable housing, and there is an affordable housing for young homeless that is in construction right now. I know Denver is, I believe they're doing a tiny home community specifically for the homeless. And I don't remember how much that's going to cost, several million dollars. But I know both Colorado Springs and Denver are trying to make that happen and address the homeless population in a way that's going to help them, where it's not just giving them housing, but it's also giving them mental health services. It's also giving them job placement, job training, and education so that they can go get a job that will pay them enough that they could afford to pay for housing on their own. Just that's what they're going to need. They're going to need mental help. Most of us do. Like, most of us are in like straits where we can barely pay the bills, barely go paycheck to paycheck. And now Oprah and The Rock want us to go and donate money to Maui victims. Like, that's a little off topic, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just people don't have money right now. It's very hard for a lot of people. And it's, so understandably, many people are homeless. And I think that's okay. And I think it's also okay that our city try to care for the residents who live here who used to have a home and weren't able to continue having one. And you can have your opinion on how they got there, but I do think that there should be more services. We have military here in Colorado Springs. Also, in case you weren't aware, we have several military installations. We've also got Space Force, which we finally got back from Huntington. So, yeah, we've got the goods here. We already had the infrastructure. The military has been a part of Colorado Springs since the 50s, and we get 40% of our income from military. So there's a lot of PCSing, permanent change of station. So military people moving to and from the installations here in Colorado Springs. And that creates a lot of income. That creates a lot of housing opportunity, rental opportunities, especially on the southern end of town. So be prepared. This is a military town. You're going to see a lot of military people, and you're going to have a lot of businesses ask you if you're military, so they can offer you a military discount. So it's just part of the culture here. The whole state of Colorado is well known for having wildfires. I mean, yeah, you've got them in California and Canada too, but you've also got them here. And so, because of that, we are constantly adding that smoke and the carcinogens and the pollutants from those fires into our air. And this contributes to why the state of Colorado in general does not have great air quality. So I recommend for people to have a good furnace filter or an HVAC filter on their systems and change it out often because it's going to keep your lungs. It's going to help you out, especially when you do have active smoke in the air from some wildfire, because we have the California wildfire smoke that blows over this way, and we've had it in our air. Like, we get to see it, even though we don't have our own fires doing that. We get it from California, or we got it from Canada briefly. And in those times, yeah, it might be nice to have a little mask on. It might be nice to have a furnace filter that has a thick enough filter to filter out smoke and carcinogens. Yeah. Oh, and then we get hail season in June and July typically, where and oftentimes it's minimal. It's just little, spitballs of hail, and it's not going to do any damage. But 2017, it was awful. I had my car totaled. My car got totaled because it was outside, and the hail blew out the back window, and there was about an inch of water in the bottom of my car. So I drove it to the place where Geico had set up to go and inspect all the vehicles because this was a massive event, citywide event. They had to set up emergency stations for people to go and take their vehicles to get them inspected. So they looked at my car and they're like, "Yeah, this is totaled." I went, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah, you just like this. Just it was too much damage to repair." And it was the same with all of the hotels that were along the Powers corridor strip, all up and down north and south. All of their south-facing windows were blown out from the hail. There was so much roof damage. There were contractors, roofing contractors were booked. Just like the water and mold mitigation contractors were booked this year, this May, June, and July, when we had all that rain, because it was just so much in a dry area that couldn't hold it, that it exposed and created these problems that were not previously there because of all this extra moisture that we just don't get. And so it's just something to be aware of, that, the weather is starting to be wonky now. We got a tornado on Pikes Peak a few weeks ago. Not like on the top of Pikes Peak, because I flipped. I was like, what? And then I saw it was like on the side of the mountain. It ripped some trees down and stuff. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's still, but I, I was gonna be like, whoa, what's going on? We had a tornado in Highlands Ranch, south side of Denver. We regularly get tornadoes out east in Peyton and Calhan. So it's just something to be aware of, that now we're getting tornadoes in city, close to in city, and it's scary stuff. We had a wildfire last year, a smaller one on the north end of town. Like, I saw it in the air, blazing. Like, we were outside of a Lowe's. We had just like bought some stuff, and people were talking outside. What's going on? And I look, and I'm like, oh, we got to get out of here. And fortunately, it didn't come into the city, but we had the 2012 Waldo Canyon fire, and that came up onto the ridge, like up to Rock Rimmon. My wife had to evacuate from her work on the west side of town because it was just that, it was that close. And you can see the scars, it burned Flying W Ranch, which is now rebuilt, but you can still see the burn marks. You could still see the empty area where uh, fire had, consumed it. And then you had the Black Forest fire in 2013, the next year. And so that, a lot of people lost homes there as well. So it's just something to be aware of for most of the city. For most of our city, we don't have that. Are not going to experience a wildfire. You're in the woods typically when that happens. You're in a wooded area when that happens. So unless you live west of I-25, it's not something that I would particularly worry about. If you do live west of I-25, or you're just extra concerned, the city is already looking into that. People are already making changes to improve the way that structures are being built. That's why we have Trex decks. We have those composite decks that are not going to burn. So that's great, so it doesn't catch on fire. We've got tile roofs so that your roof doesn't catch on fire. You've got a perimeter in which you don't have any trees close enough to your house for a fire to spread. Even though, I mean, we had, you saw the news on the Maui fire. It was what I heard, like 80 feet. The winds were so strong that they were blowing embers over, to spots that you wouldn't think would catch on fire. And that's another thing too. We have a lot of wind here in the city, especially the further out east you go. So when we get wildfires, it really kicks in. And I guess, again, we're dry. We're dry here. It is fuel heaven for fire. So it's just be careful time. Keep your insurance high, and be mindful of how you build your house or where you buy your house, and just be prepared for that sort of situation. Here's a good one. Snow will reflect a lot of sunlight. So if you're outside in the wintertime and there's snow on the ground, might I recommend you apply some sunscreen on your exposed skin, because you can and will still get a sunburn when it's wintertime and it's sunny out. Or even if it's not that sunny out, but the snow's on the ground, that reflected light can and still will burn you over time. So just be mindful of that. We recently got solar panels on our house, and by recently, I mean we signed the solar panel contract in September of 2022, and we got them installed several months after that, but the we didn't get the final approval to actually start using them and connecting them to the city grid until July of this year. So, yeah, 2 months ago. So it took a while for the city to approve our solar panel permit just to do that for whatever reason. And it costs, I think, 25-ish grand, something like that, give or take. But what you're getting, you're not paying that up front. You're paying that as a loan. So your monthly payment ends up being like 80 to 100 bucks a month. And meanwhile, if you're using your solar panel generated energy instead of just straight up drawing electricity from the grid, you're no longer paying for electricity from the grid. You're instead using it from your solar panels. So the idea is that the solar panel loan is offset by not paying your electricity bill. The benefit for you on that is that when your solar panels are paid off, you no longer have that electrical expense because the solar panels continue to generate the power. So, and again, you're not paying for this up front. It's a loan and it is a lien against your property, but that is a monthly payment that is equivalent to your electrical bill. So you're basically trading something and not necessarily losing anything so that you can have a future benefit. And so if you end up selling that property uh, and having those solar panels, the question is this going to add any value to my property? Yes and no. What I mean by that is it will add any, if the solar panel loan that you have is paid off, or if in general you already bought the solar panels, say in cash, um, the value of the house is going to be that much more, basically what you paid for that. If you still have the lien or the loan on the solar panels when you sell the property, and now you have to pay that loan, the rest of that loan off with your seller proceeds, that is not going to add any value to the buyer because you see what I mean? They're not getting anything from it. So it's not adding a value to them unless the panels are paid off because now there is value because now they're already out the gate getting the benefit, if that makes sense. So that's generally, as a real estate agent, and as I've seen other real estate agents and appraisers consider the value of solar panels, that's generally what the consensus is on the value. Those are all the things that I can think of for just things, random things that you would want to know about living in Colorado Springs, what it's like to live here. I may do a part two if I get a bunch of other ideas. But if you have some thoughts about, hey, you've lived here a while, like, what do you think now that you've been here? Put it down in the comments below, like share that so that people watching this can also benefit. Because as we all know, the YouTube comments are better than the video. Make it so. I'll see you next time.